My name is Sierra Lane. I'm 28 years old, and until last month, I thought I was the kind of person corporations like to keep around, not flashy, not loud, just consistent. I was the type who stayed late without being asked, who took notes in meetings no one else remembered, who followed rules so tightly that even my shortcuts were documented. I wasn't trying to rise fast. I was just trying not to sink. I worked in finance operations for a logistics software company in Denver mid-sized, private, and full of smiling people who used words like culture and collaboration while quietly tracking every click you made. For 3 years, I handled back-end accounts, compliance flags, and internal audit coordination. It wasn't glamorous, but I was good at it. I kept records clean. I caught little mistakes before they became headlines. And somewhere along the line, I started to believe that being useful meant I was safe. I wasn't. It started 6 months ago with a spreadsheet that didn't balance. A minor monthly variance, a few $1,000s unaccounted for. Normally, that wouldn't raise alarms, but something about it felt wrong. The error wasn't random. It was repeated, duplicated across 3 vendors, all tied to a single executive cost center. I flagged it. I emailed about it. I even had a conversation with our internal compliance lead. He smiled too much, said it was being handled, and gently reminded me not to get too deep into files outside my assignment scope. That was the first time I felt a wall, not a hard one, just soft resistance, the kind that pushes back without looking like it's pushing back. So I backed off, but the numbers didn't stop. In fact, the variances grew month by month, just small enough to fall below escalation thresholds, just subtle enough to stay invisible to anyone who wasn't looking at the big picture. I was looking. I couldn't help it. In quiet hours, I began documenting, just for myself. I kept logs, screenshots, monthly deltas, not because I was planning anything, but because I needed to prove to myself that I wasn't imagining it, that the files weren't lying, that someone somewhere was quietly manipulating the books. I didn't tell anyone, not my coworkers, not my family, not even the one friend I trusted from HR. I just watched, waited, took notes, and then one day, 2 weeks before the quarterly board review, I noticed something strange. A new audit folder appeared on the internal drive, one I hadn't seen before. It was mislabeled, hidden in an archive labeled 2021 Vendor Transitions. When I opened it, it wasn't vendor records. It was an early-stage internal audit, flagged, buried, ignored. It confirmed everything I had suspected. Fraudulent expense entries, falsified approval trails, payment cycles were routed through shell vendors with addresses that didn't exist, and signatures, digital stamps of 2 senior executives I'd only seen on investor calls. That's when I knew. They knew. They'd found it long before me, and someone higher up had ordered it buried. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the dark with that file open, heart racing, mind burning. I wasn't supposed to see this, and I definitely wasn't supposed to still have access to it. But I did. Not because I hacked anything, just because, like always, they forgot to lock the door behind them. I was the one who built most of their documentation flows. I trained the system to store quietly, and now it was storing their secret. I didn't copy the file. I didn't leak it. I just closed it and tried to pretend I could still go to work like nothing had changed. I lasted 9 more days. On a Wednesday afternoon, 4:43 p.m., I got called into a conference room with an HR rep I'd never met. My direct manager wasn't there. No one from my team, just HR and a pre-written script. They said my recent performance had been below company expectations, that my attitude had been increasingly distant, that it was a termination without cause. They slid a folder across the table. There was no severance, no appeal, just silence. I asked about my last paycheck. They said it would be processed in due time. And just like that, 3 years of work was erased in 6 minutes. They didn't even ask for my badge. I walked out of that room carrying nothing, no title, no dignity, not even the explanation I deserved. But what they didn't know, what they never imagined, was that I still remembered the file they hid. And the next morning, the world would remember it too. I kept replaying the moment in my head, the click of the door behind me, the rustle of the HR folder. The way the woman across the table didn't look at me not once like, if she acknowledged me as a human being, she might break the illusion that this wasn't personal. They always say that. It's not personal, Sierra. But that room didn't feel like business. It felt like a cover-up. I didn't argue. That's the part that still stings. I didn't yell or cry or demand an answer. I just sat there, blinking, trying to process how a company I helped hold together during their worst quarter was now kicking me out with a generic template and no paycheck. My body went cold. I remember gripping the edge of the table just to feel something real. They told me to sign the acknowledgement form. I didn't. I slid it back, not with defiance, just stillness. I walked out of that room like I was floating. Nobody looked up when I passed their desks, no goodbyes, no one asked why. I'd become invisible before they even opened the door. They locked me out of the system within 30 minutes. Email gone, Slack deactivated, even my employee portal access. But what they didn't realize, or maybe what they forgot, was that months earlier I had created an offline sync tool for field auditors. It was a backup method, something I developed quietly during a server outage. No one else stayed late to fix. That tool had synced my local drive with my internal archive, which meant the audit I saw. I still had it, encrypted, offline, time, stamped. They thought firing me would solve the problem, that by removing me from the building, they removed what I knew, but they never understood what kind of employee I was. I didn't work for praise. I worked for protection, for traceability, for the kind of integrity their board slides pretended to celebrate. After they fired me, I went home. I didn't tell anyone what had happened. Not even my sister. I sat in my kitchen in silence, just breathing. I hadn't cried. I still haven't, maybe because I wasn't shocked. Somewhere deep down, I had felt this coming. I just hadn't wanted to believe they'd go that far. But the moment they handed me that empty folder and called me Loper, forming, it all clicked. They weren't firing me for performance. They were eliminating a risk, me, because I had seen the file. I had read the audit. I had access to timelines and signature trails and unresolved compliance, flags they thought were buried under folder names and bureaucracy. And I had been asking too many quiet questions that made me a liability. And liabilities get removed. I opened my laptop that night and stared at the encrypted folder. I didn't rush. I didn't open it right away. I just hovered over the file name and thought about all the mornings I arrived early, all the times I said no problem. To last-minute asks, all the weekends I worked unpaid because you're the only one who knows this process, Sierra. I was the one who fixed it when their reconciliation system glitched. I was the one who taught 2 of the current managers how to clean vendor records. I was the one who stayed late during the merger panic and recompiled a full quarter's expense log manually because someone forgot to back it up. And now they labeled me Loper, forming. That phrase echoed in my mind like a bad joke. No warning, no performance reviews, no write-ups, just a decision made in a room I wasn't invited into. And just like that, my name was erased from the team chat, the staff directory, the project wiki. Like I had never existed, except I had, and the system still remembered. So I made a decision, not revenge, not emotion, just choice. They wanted to erase me. I would make sure the truth stayed visible. I didn't copy the file to the cloud. I didn't leak it online. I did one thing. I scheduled a courier pickup for 9:30 a.m. the next morning, the destination, a federal audit liaison's desk, the one listed in our compliance protocol manual, page 87, the one I had personally updated last fall. I printed the report, every page, bound it, labeled it, signed it with my name. I didn't add anything, didn't change anything, didn't need to. The file spoke for itself. All I did was send it to the place it was always meant to go. Not out of anger, not out of spite, just because no one else would. And if they ever asked who leaked the audit they buried, I'd say no one leaked anything. Someone just remembered how to do their job. The file was delivered by 10:12 a.m. I tracked the courier only once, not to check if it would arrive, but to confirm that I hadn't imagined any of it, that I had really done it, that something I carried in silence for months now existed in someone else's hands. Not a copy, not an email attachment, A real folder, real pages, my handwriting on the cover. Internal odd, it unresolved flags confidential. And then, I waited, the world didn't shake, there was no siren. The company didn't collapse in a single headline or social media post. It just kept going, at least for a little while, but I watched, not obsessively, just quietly, the way I had always worked, the same way I noticed missing vendor lines or expense entries that didn't align. I knew how patterns looked when they started to unravel, and by the second day, things felt off. They changed their homepage banner. Nothing major, just softer language, a shift in wording from trusted by regulators to partnered with oversight agencies. Subtle. Most people wouldn't even notice, but I did. They were adjusting the narrative, preemptively. The third day, a friend texted me, not someone from inside, someone from college, who now worked in government procurement. Hey, is everything okay at your old job? Hearing whispers about a pulled audit. Weird timing. Weird timing. That's what they'd call it, I knew. That's what they'd say when things started breaking in ways they couldn't explain. And by the end of that week, a journalist posted something that made my chest tighten. A short tweet, getting tips about an internal audit that was buried months ago. If you've got info, my DM are open. You're not alone. It wasn't about me. Not yet, but the ripples had started. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I knew the file would speak louder than anything I could say. It was real. It was signed. It was sent through the same protocols I used to document for the board's quarterly reviews. This wasn't a whistleblower file. It was just the truth, and the truth, when documented properly, becomes undeniable. By the following Monday, I checked the company's job page out of habit. 8 positions were suddenly marked as closed, 2 of them in compliance. One of them, ironically, in internal audit operations. I looked at the listings for a while, remembering how I once applied through that same portal, nervous and hopeful, thinking maybe this would be the place where I could finally just do good work and be treated fairly. That portal felt like another life now. Later that day, someone from inside messaged me through a burner email I'd created years ago for backups. I hadn't spoken to her in 6 months. She used to work 2 desks over. Did you send it? I didn't reply, but I didn't have to. She sent another line. Whatever happens next, thank you. That message stayed open on my screen for an hour, not because I needed thanks, but because someone else finally saw it. Someone else finally knew. I think the most painful part of being discarded isn't losing the job, or the benefits, or the routine. It's losing the feeling that someone somewhere knows what you did for them. That you mattered, that you weren't invisible. Now the file I sent was no longer a secret I carried alone. It lived in email threads I'd never see. It sat in inboxes of people who used to talk about me like I was a quiet asset. It hovered over meetings where people were now choosing their words more carefully, because the thing about a buried file, once it's unearthed, it doesn't go back, it lingers, it questions everything built on top of it. And it forces people to ask, what else did they hide? I heard nothing from HR, no call, no letter, no post-termination correction, not even my last paycheck. But the irony, by that Friday, the company issued a transparency memo to their partners. I found a PDF version through a public link, buried on a compliance forum. It said, "We take all internal audits seriously and are currently reviewing our archival documentation for procedural accuracy." That was the moment I knew the file had reached them too. They couldn't admit what it was, but they couldn't ignore it anymore either. I closed my laptop, I made tea, and for the first time in 6 months, I didn't feel like I was waiting for someone to believe me. I didn't need validation. I had sent the truth exactly where it was supposed to go. And the best part, they were finally the ones staying late to clean it up. The first article dropped 7 days after I sent the file. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, it was precise like a scalpel. The headline was quiet. Internal audit missing from logistics firm's public record raises questions ahead of merger. Just that, no names. No accusations, just a question. But questions, the right ones, are louder than facts. By that afternoon, I knew they were panicking. They sent out an all-staff email, masking it as a routine transparency communication. I don't work there anymore, but someone forwarded it to me from their personal phone. It read, as part of our ongoing commitment to compliance, we're reviewing internal record systems to ensure alignment with best practices. They were spinning, softening, backpedaling, because now the silence wasn't theirs to control. It was cracking. One by one, small but deliberate stories began surfacing, not from me, from people who had left months ago. From anonymous accounts on professional forums, from vendors whose payments were delayed without explanation. None of them said the full thing, none of them knew the whole picture, but they had pieces. The kind that, when put together, formed a shape the company couldn't flatten anymore. I read each post quietly, like someone listening to a room slowly remember a name it tried to forget. The best part. No one mentioned me, because I never gave them the satisfaction of a public identity to attack. I had sent the file anonymously. No leak signature, no personal email trail, just the audit, just the truth. Unedited, untouched, unstoppable. 2 days after the article dropped, I got an email from a Gmail account I didn't recognize. No subject line, just one line of text. They're meeting with the SEC on Tuesday. No one's sleeping. I don't know who sent it. And I didn't reply, but I knew it was real, because that Tuesday morning, one of the executives I recognized from the falsified audit signatures quietly updated his LinkedIn. No announcement, no goodbye post. Just removed his job title, changed it to in transition. The kind of transition people don't walk into, the kind they're pushed through. Then came the investors, that was inevitable. A mid-tier venture firm that had previously praised the company's financial resilience released a very vague, very careful statement. We are reevaluating all partnerships to ensure alignment with our core principles. That line, core principles, the same words they used during employee training videos. The same ones on the hallway poster next to the kitchen. Now they were turning against them. That week, I stopped tracking, not because I didn't care anymore, but because the truth no longer needed me to carry it. It had learned how to move on its own. It was sitting in inboxes and boardrooms, bouncing between lawyers and regulators, forcing people who once spoke in buzzwords to use real language again. Terms like noncompliance, material risk, and criminal liability. I had spent 3 years organizing those terms in neat reports, never thinking they'd be weaponized by someone like me. But that's the thing. I didn't weaponize anything. I didn't take anything down. I just let the truth go. And now they were chasing it like a fire they couldn't see but kept smelling. I got a call from a recruiter that week, completely unrelated. She found my resume from a site I hadn't updated in months. I almost didn't answer, but I picked up. She said, "Hey, Sierra, are you still looking?" I almost laughed, still looking, still standing, still quiet. I told her yes, because I was, but not in the way she meant. I wasn't looking for another office. I was looking for peace, and maybe finally I had earned it. Because somewhere, in a corner of an internal meeting where people used to pretend they didn't know my name, someone had to say it. Not out loud, not on paper, but silently, with regret, and that was enough.